Hello and welcome to the Alex Gem Experience episode 1. Yes, welcome. Okay, let's begin with giving you an outline as to what these podcasts consist of and how they will develop. Okay, so there's not 100% clear guide in terms of what will be discussed and what won't be discussed, these sort of things, but essentially some of the main topics that we'll be addressing in this podcast relates to fitness, health, neuroscience like NLP, having that growth, abundant mindset, becoming more conscious, awakened, how to experience better quality emotions, how to change your habits, no matter what it might be. So if it's as like innocuous as just learning how to play a new sport, for example. Or even as it relates to, stopping addictive behaviors such as smoking or excessive drinking or anything that causes like oxidative damage or anything along those means. Everything is addressed in this podcast, not in just one episode, but in terms of what we'll be doing as the podcast develops. So we'll start off with some fan questions. So a few questions that I've been asked recently. Someone has asked me, why am I feeling so sad? And how can I change my emotions? Now, I mean, there are so many different variables involved, but fortunately for this person, they've been able to identify what the issue is, and they've highlighted their sadness in this instance. And it makes sense at the moment why a lot of people would be struggling. We're obviously going through COVID-19. We've got a lot of pressures that we're experiencing. Things can worsen in ways as the following months unfold. So I can understand people's apprehension and their sadness. And I've actually done a video on how COVID-19 causes depression. And sadness is like a precursor for depression. So the more you experience sadness every single day, the more you condition yourself to essentially fire those mental and emotional mechanisms, if you will, those patterns that force you to, feel sad or depressed, for instance. And there are so many different variables involved. I mean, changing your physiology can have a massive difference, a massive positive effect on how you feel. Smiling, laughing, going for walks amongst nature, especially because it calms down your brainwave state. And let me go back slightly, because when you experience sadness, you are experiencing a negative emotion, obviously. But when you experience emotions like this, it's often a case because of you might be living in the past. I mean, you genuinely might be waking up every day thinking about certain things that make you feel bad, that make you stressed, and so on and so forth. That causes anger or resentment or jealousy or indignation or whatever it is for you, right? And in this person in particular, sadness we're referring to here. So if you're waking up and you are living within your egoic mind, and by that I'm not just referring to having a fancy car and these sort of things. Our egoic patterns, our thought forms, our way of thinking is really to do with the physical form and life itself, and we try so hard to hold on to anything that makes us grounded, if you will, anything that labels us, anything that we associate with our identity. We want to cling on to that, but when we do that, we in fact very much limit our experiences, we limit our behaviors and possibilities and a whole host of different things. So by experiencing sadness, it could be because you are recollecting some awful experiences that you've partaken in the past, that things that have happened to you, and so on and so forth. And it can be a pattern that you've now become accustomed to. Patterns take over 30 days, but oftentimes, scientifically speaking here, actually between 66 days to 365 days for a habit to be instilled in your unconscious. So I mean, it takes time to experience sadness on a daily basis, and what's really disastrous is that sometimes it's not even the experience. Your thought alone can trigger these patterns. So every thought that we have triggers a similar emotion, releases a similar chemical in the brain, which we know to be a feeling, an emotion, right? And if this emotion is strong enough, then it can lead to a traumatic experience in the mind, and then you start to behave in ways that kind of are expressive of these emotions that you're experiencing. And that's a very basic way of looking at it. Your thoughts influences your emotions. There's a feedback loop between the two, back and forth, and your emotions essentially are the intermediary between your thoughts and your behaviors. And our behaviors reflect our emotions that we experience. And if you condition yourself to experience sadness, like I'm saying, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to, imagine an experience that made you feel sad. Your thought alone can trigger the mechanisms, okay? So what I advocate for you is to become more present in the immediate experience. So rather than being lost in your mind, whether thinking about negative things that have already happened to you in the past, or negative portrayals of what might happen to you in the future, contemplating like worst case scenarios and these sorts of things. And when you condition yourself to live in this fashion, you're setting yourself up for failure. And in many cases, you're setting yourself up to experience much of the same. Because you are conditioning your inner energy field, and you begin to attract what you see, your perspective, the lens that you have that fits your narrative, your identity. And if you experience sadness often, quite frequently, what's going to happen is you begin to associate sadness with being your personality trait, and you begin to associate being sad or despondent or whatever it is with being who you are, and therefore you begin to enact it simply because you're like, oh, it's just the way I am. This is the way I am. I'm quite sad. I have low energy. I'm quite inactive, quite inert. I think these negative thoughts is just the way I am. And especially if you get a lot of attention by being sad, whether it be through loved ones, through friends, colleagues, peers, whatever it might be. I'm not saying don't express yourself, because it's very important to not suppress how you feel, because that can lead to even worse situations and even like mental illness and disease in many forms. Stress leads to disease, and sadness is a form of fear. And anytime you become fearful, it's because your ego is at play here. So it's hard to become happy, content, joyous, or peaceful if you are living within your conditioned consciousness, if you are living within the mind, if you are waking up thinking, this is who I am, this is how I am, this is my age, this is my gender, this is where I'm from, this is my culture, these are my ethics, these are my morals, these are the people I love, these are the people I hate, You start to create a box that you live in. But the more you live in this kind of box that you like, this box is me. Everything in this box are my life experiences thus far, and therefore these are my beliefs, because beliefs are a construct of your past experiences. Beliefs are a result of what you might have experienced in the past, for example. And you begin to live up to these experiences. So you begin to live these patterns out because you associate them with who you are. And human beings want what's familiar, but they also want to be consistent with what they experience. Your unconscious doesn't want you to be happy. It just wants you to feel safe. And even if you are experiencing negative emotions such as sadness, it knows you're safe because it's become accustomed to it. So even though you might be thinking, like, why am I sad? How am I feeling this way? I want to change my emotions. At the end of the day, if you've programmed yourself to feel that way, then your unconscious will look for ways to kind of mirror those emotions on a regular basis. And you will have a lot of negative self-talk to try and bring you back into that trap, if you will, into the shadow of the past, into, to feed that negative energy field that you've created of sadness, for instance. And it's really down to you to not listen to your mind's excuses. For example, if you think to yourself, you know what, I'm sad because, I'm becoming more and more inactive, more and more inert. I'm not moving around, I'm not really socializing like I used to. And then the very thought of socializing or going and doing exercise or going and learning a new skill, developing a new skill, it can sometimes it can force you to, it can force you to kind of refrain from doing those activities. You'll come up with excuses, so you'll start thinking like, exercise. I would have done exercise today, but I have these other things that I want to think about doing it as well. Or if you think about, eating healthily, you might go, well, I'm feeling quite sad. Let's just eat what's convenient, what I can find, which often tends to be like highly processed, refined junk foods, for instance. So your brain is very intelligent, and your unconscious will come up with excuses to keep you from becoming active and therefore happy, and so on and so forth. So really, what I suggest is to become very objective with your thinking, to spot your thoughts and to question your thoughts, because the more you question your thoughts, the more it loses its validity. So you want to question your negative thoughts, but you don't necessarily want to be questioning, why am I positive? Why am I happy? Why do I feel optimistic today? You don't necessarily want to overly question and excessively question your positive thoughts and your positive emotions, because you want to keep those going, right? But you do want to do that for your negative thoughts and your negative emotions, such as sad ones, right? So being active is one of the best ways that you can change your feelings of sadness, because when you exercise, obviously it releases endorphins, it improves your mood, but also exercise is linked to stimulating neurogenesis, which is the creation of new neurons in your brain. And if you create new neurons, whether it be in your forebrain or within your hippocampus, within your limbic brain, like you can become more intelligent, and it creates new pathways in your mind, new neurological circuitry, new neurological patterns, if you will, become constructed. And that's what learning is. And that's how you develop, and that's how you start to think new thoughts on a daily basis, and you start to change those sad thoughts and those sad feelings. Okay, so you're going to want to be patient with these things, and also you don't want to be very harsh on yourself if and when sadness comes back to you. So say, for example, if tomorrow you're like, sadness like clouds your judgment again, you feel sad, and you're like, I can't believe I'm feeling sad again. This is so pathetic. And then you start to be harsh, and like, oh, no, I want to force myself. I have to be happy. And when you try and force things, again, it's an egoic response, but you're also setting yourself up for more failure, because you're adding negativity and being self-deprecating and being really harsh and belittling yourself here, because you want to change your state. So what I recommend you doing if and when sadness manifests in the future for you, instead of being very harsh on yourself, simply experience that emotion in the present moment and understand that, this too shall pass. This negative feeling will soon pass by as well, and it's just let it float and drift away, because it will be supplanted with a far more beneficial, elevated emotion next. So don't try and force the change and so on and so forth. Be patient with yourself. Be self-loving. When you do happy things, right, you can't be sad. It's just the way it is. It's just the rule of the universe. It's the rule. It's the law, if you will, of creating a positive energy field. If you exercise on a regular basis every day, if you do things like your meditation, if you take the right kind of supplementation, if you're learning things in different ways, and you're challenging your brain and you're keeping active, if you spend time with your loved ones, if they make you happy, that is, and your friends, if you eat rather healthily, you don't have to be like a health freak, but if you eat like earth-grown, whole foods, nutrient-dense foods like your vegetables, your salads, if you avoid sugary, like high carbohydrate-based foods, then you give your brain a chance to relax. You give your digestive system a chance to kind of relax. So avoid overeating and these sorts of things. Avoid anything that fuels oxidative stress, and avoid things that harm your brain cells, such as overtraining, poor sleep quality, eating too many refined processed foods, causing chronic inflammation and harming your brain cells, in fact. Avoid conflict and drama. And sometimes that, again, relates to people's habits. So you might have a habit of looking for drama. You might have a habit of looking to be upset with something, of looking to be offended, if you will, and finding things in your situations and having that your specific paradigms and your perspectives. You'll start to look out for things that wind you up or make you feel sad, because you're creating those patterns, you're reliving your habits, and that's what your past, that's what your ego makes you do, really, and that's what your unconscious will look to do. So it's all part of the process of is changing your patterns, changing your emotions, and you can do that by stimulating neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is about doing certain things to help restructure and rewire how your brain works. And you can do that in a multitude of different ways. New experiences are one of the best ways of helping you change. So it could be going on holiday to new places, watching new movies or a new series, for example, even though I'm not the biggest fan of TV, for many like conspicuous reasons. But yeah, what was I saying? Yes, neuroplasticity happens through new experiences. So it could be things like going to a new park. It could be going on a holiday. It could be buying a new training package or buying a new book to read, or it could be meeting new friends or going out to new places, and so on and so forth. I don't have to tell you what a new experience is, but I'm just giving you some examples. And it's very hard to stay sad if you're experiencing new things, if you're making time for your loved ones, if you're giving to other people. You cannot be sad. And I must be honest, because that's the whole point of these podcasts. I'm not constrained by anything. I can speak my mind. And a lot of people, will kind of put themselves off because of their mindset, if you will. They'll kind of, because their ego wants to see things in a certain way. Anything that doesn't abide by what they think and what they know, and anything that they associate with their identity, they'll take it as a threat. And so they'll say no to all these new experiences. They'll say no to changing their perspectives, because in many ways it could be an overactive ego. That wasn't the point I was meant to make, but I've completely lost my trail of thought. So bear with me. But yes, changing your emotions. If you are doing happy things, if you're exercising, if you're eating well, if you're sleeping 7 hours plus every single day, if you may be taking the right kind of supplementation, if you're learning, that could be a new course, it could be reading a book or listen to an audio or whatever it is that you prefer learning with, like, you will feel better. If you're experiencing vitamin D, if you're experiencing sunshine, for example, that is a massive mood enhancer, a massive mood boost. If you are doing nice things for other people and you're giving, that's what I was going to say. Like, people who tend to be very depressed also tend to be very egoic, lost in their ego, right? And therefore, when you're lost in your ego, you tend to be more selfish. So in many ways, if you want to overcome depression and sadness, you've got to be less selfish. And so what I advocate is actually doing more for other people, giving more, sharing more, being more positive, smiling at someone if they're a stranger, like, just to spread positive vibes. If it's giving to charity, if it's doing charitable work, if it's teaching someone something valuable or being there for someone, whether it be a distant friend or a close familial member, whomever it might be, just the act of giving in different ways of your time, your energy, or your finances, for that matter, like, or sharing your wisdom or sharing your skills with the world. These are all really positive things that will positively, like, shift your energy field, and you start to feel more abundant and more positive. So the reason why people often feel depressed is because they feel like they're losing something, or that they can't gain something. But if you feel like you're having to gain or lose something, then again, you're working within the constructs of your egoic consciousness, of this very limited form of, this is who I am. I want a bigger house. I want this and that. I want people to think highly of me. I want to sound amazing. I want to look amazing, and all these sorts of things. It's different for different people, right? People feel significant or try to claim superiority by their beliefs, by their health, by their lack of health, by just their behaviors, but their religion, perhaps their political standpoint. All these different ways people look to be significant. And that's what we battle with. When you're wanting to change your emotions, that's why it's not as simple as just read a positive book. Like, that can help, that has its place, but there are so many variables involved that we need to address, such as the things that I've outlined. So let's have a quick sip, shall we? I'm having black coffee here. I'm doing my fasting. I put some Himalayan salt in here. I like doing intermittent fasting several times a week, not necessarily every day. It's very good for your testosterone levels naturally, very good for stimulating growth hormone. You can only lose body fat If your growth hormone's high and your insulin's kept low, and when you eat too much and oftentimes the wrong types of food, you keep spiking your insulin levels, and it's impossible to lose weight if you've got high insulin or high cortisol for that matter as well. The stress hormone, that is cortisol. So yeah, I like to have my black coffee. Obviously keeps me sharper, makes me more focused, satiates my appetite, so I'm not as hungry, and all these sorts of things. And caffeine can be a cognitive enhancer, but it also can stimulate your metabolism even more. So the more you stimulate your metabolism, you burn more calories when at rest like this, or when you're exercising. So anyway, that's the little fitness part done. I thought I would share that with you. So another question I've got is someone's asked me what makes me happy. Cool. All right. Chance for me to talk about myself. Who doesn't like talking about themselves? Well, not me necessarily too much, because I'm less egoic than most. But so what makes me happy? Freedom. Yes, freedom makes me happy for sure. But freedom is a very generic term, isn't it? So let's give you some examples. What makes me happy is being amongst nature. I like large open spaces. That makes me happy, whether it be tall ceilings, whether it be like open space, whether it be like being amongst nature, the trees, the sunshine, being able to oversee like mountains and all these sorts of things. Nature is absolutely incredible because it stimulates something called BDNF as well, brain-derived nootropic factors. Beautiful, rich scenery and open spaces helps you to clear your mind. And BDNF helps to strengthen the synaptical connections amongst your existing neurons, leading to better quality thinking, better quality thoughts, better quality neurological connections amongst your neurons. So that you think better quality thoughts, you feel stronger, you have more energy. I won't necessarily go into stimulate BDNF in this particular podcast, but you can do it in many different ways. Hot and cold exposure, consuming glutamate in your diet, like think of your traditional omelette, for example, those kind of like tomatoes, mushrooms, milk, eggs, those sort of things. HIIT training can stimulate BDNF, so can like a ketogenic lifestyle, high fats, low carbs, very low carbs, and moderate amounts of protein. That's what a ketogenic lifestyle supports. So ketones support cognitive function, so that you can think better, make better quality thoughts, and more meticulous, higher quality, like evaluative or analytical thinking, for instance. So what makes me happy? Making time for loved ones, sharing my skills with the world, like what I'm doing now, makes me feel so abundant, so happy. The fact that people are listening, hopefully enjoying the content firstly, but also like learning. And that's the whole point of this podcast, to teach people cool things and to help them become inspired, and to keep them on path. And that's something that I love. That's why I love to read books. That's why I love to listen to audios if I'm driving and these sorts of things. I love to feed my brain quality material. And that's what I like to give back to the world. I believe this is one of my biggest skills, being able to share my wisdom, my experiences, being able to teach people how to become more present, how to live more healthily, more abundantly, more peacefully. Because for me, it doesn't get more important than that. Like, forget reputation, forget wanting to seem cool. Money's, I have a positive outlook on money. And I wouldn't say that money makes me happy, but it makes people more of what they already are. So if you're an arsehole, money can just make you more of an arsehole. If you're a happy person, it makes you more happy, for example. It just amplifies your existing emotions and so on and so forth. So yes, happiness is very, very important. And I work on my happiness. Do you know what I mean? It's not the reason why people struggle to be happy and is because they like a happy occasion will happen, and they think that occasion is going to keep them happy for a sustained period of time, and it just doesn't work like that. So people think, when I get married, I'll be happy, or when I get that really nice car, I'm going to be very happy, or when I get that promotion, I'm going to be very happy. And Events won't make you happy. It's what you do day in, day out that makes you happy. It's all about the process. That's what happiness is. Happiness isn't an outcome driven. Like, if you think it's outcome driven, then really you're acting out of your ego again. And therefore, you're living in a very constrained and restricted, limited way. That's just what happens. So, when you're doing something because of your ego, because you want to feel superior, unique, different, these sorts of things, then firstly, even if you do achieve the thing that you had in mind that you wanted to achieve, you're not going to be fulfilled, because you cannot be satisfied by fulfilling your ego, because your ego always wants more. It's always looking at what's wrong. Okay, it pays attention to what's right, but not for long enough. So, for example, if you get the fancy car, what about your mate who's got 3 nice cars, for example? You know, oh, I've got a nice car. I know this is a nice car, but what about Greg? Like, Greg's got 3 nice cars. He's got a Lamborghini. He's got a nice Mercedes. Do you know what I mean? I've got to fix things up. You know, I'm not doing well enough. That's your ego at play here. Or you got your promotion, and then you're like, you know, so maybe a peer or an even better position opened up. You're like, oh crap, like, see, I got this. I'm stuck with this job now. You just spent 1 or 2 years trying to get that promotion. You finally got it, and just because a different position's opened up, or your mate got an even better promotion, or your peer who you compete against got an even better promotion, all of a sudden it devalues what you've just achieved. And that's the problem of when you try to achieve something through motivation and through your ego. You're not going to be fulfilled. It's just not going to happen. So instead, act out of inspiration. Instead, be present and focus on doing things that you enjoy. And if you get more financial support as a consequence, as a side effect of doing the things you love, like, that's the beautiful thing here. So you want to make sure that the way I see it is, do things out of enjoyment and stay on that path. And you will be able to make it a lucrative opportunity. You will be able to monetize your passions, because you're going to do those passions and learn about it naturally every single day. If it's something you enjoy doing, then you're going to study it more, you're going to do it more, you're going to experience it more, you're going to have more accumulated hours that's going to make you a master in that specific field. And the problem is, a lot of people are sad because they're chasing something that's not fulfilling them. And they're doing it to please others, or to show off, or any other, like, egoic construct, for example. So I tend to do this. I tend to talk about, this question's about me, and I've blimmin' gone and started to talk about other people and how it all works. So let's bring it back to me, shall we? What makes me happy? Pushing myself. I really enjoy making time for the things that I love doing. So being healthier, being more positive. What makes me happy is laughter. I love being amongst people where I can laugh. And I love being amongst people where I feel like I can truly be myself. And, that wasn't always the easiest thing for me, personally, because I wasn't so conscious and awakened and enlightened like I am now. I used to, do my best to make others happy, and therefore, neglect myself in many ways. Or I was chasing an egoic form of happiness, and that's why I was never fulfilled. So I'm happy now because I'm not attached to things. Like, don't get me wrong, nice studio, nice setup, all this sort of stuff. I'm not attached to nothing. Like, we are in this physical realm for such a short period of time, and people spend so much of their lives, most people spend 70% of their lives living in the hormones of stress, living within chronic stress, and chronic stress is feeling overwhelmed. It is experiencing negative emotions. It is feeling like anxious, and so on and so forth. That's what stress is. And it's like, life in this physical form is so short. Like, why are you going to spend so much time comparing yourself to others, trying to look and seem superior, when you could actually be experiencing positive emotions? And it is a choice. Being happy is a choice, but a lot of people can't see the choice and the possibilities, because they're seeing life through such a very narrow, obstinate, stubborn kind of mindset. And because they're staying within their comfort zone, because they aren't doing new things. They're not stimulating neuroplasticity, neurogenesis. They aren't learning new things. They aren't being positive. They aren't giving because they're trying to just keep whatever they have, whether it be their finances or they don't want to share what they learn, or they want to keep things and hoard things, and kind of living that scarcity mindset and in that limited mindset. Like, no one's going to thrive in that mindset. You cannot be happy if that's how you live. So what makes me happy? Moving away from my ego over the years is making me very, very happy. Being peaceful with and content and joyous with the most simple things in life. More than ever am I kind of lost in the moment, let's put it that way, in a beautiful sense. More than ever do I make time to just look at the sunshine, if your eyes can deal with it, or like looking into the sky, or looking at the moon, or listening to birds chirping, or listening to the sound of laughter and positivity, and just being very present with life and in the moment, and having that kind of peaceful yet subtle background aura, background noise, if you will, that kind of follows me, if you will, in every experience that I encounter. So whenever I become, and I'm only human, sometimes something will happen, and it can trigger the ego. But what I advocate for all of us is, firstly, become good at being conscious of your ego. That's one of the very first steps to being able to become less egoic, is identifying when your ego is present. Whenever you feel fearful, or you're in your mind, you're lost in your mind, or you're becoming stressed and anxious or depressed and worried, and all that, you're adopting all this negative physiology and all these sorts of things. Like, you just zone out. Stop seeing things in your foveal vision, like literally narrow-minded. Instead, broaden what you can see, and see what's around you without that having to directly look at it. That's all about taking into account everything, that the entire experience, rather than seeing something like in that very limited, egoic, narrow-minded way. So that's what I advocate. And what makes me happy are the simplest of things. Listen to the sound of water, listen to the sound of ducks, or like I said, birds chirping, or when I'm reading a book, and just the sounds of turning the page over. Like, these are the very simplest things in life. And when I'm experiencing these kind of peaceful, natural moments, if you will, that's when I feel so free and so connected to the world, and I feel so blessed and grateful in many ways. And when you're grateful, you can't be fearful. Those two things don't exist simultaneously. Gratitude is linked to love and a higher level of consciousness, whereas fear is linked to stress, the ego, and a lack of consciousness, for sure. So what makes me happy are very simple things. Like, what makes me happy is having time to read. What makes me happy is making others smile, making other people laugh, and that's it, really. That's what okay. What makes me happy is exercising as well. I love to exercise. That wasn't always the case. I used to be very much obese. I used to hate the concept or the idea of actually going to physically exercise somewhere. And I've changed it through time, through my habits, through dopamine. So dopamine is released when it's the reward mechanism, reward system, if you will. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, it's a hormone. It's inhibitory and excitatory, meaning that it can calm you, but it also can excite you and make you motivated to do more things. And dopamine, just like many neurotransmitters, are very, very, very important, but to have them balanced as well. But you experience dopamine when you feel like you've done something valuable. Okay, now what it gets subjective, and this is one of the ways to be happy. So it is linked to the question here: what makes you happy? Some people, when they exercise, if they don't have a deep enough why or a positive association with why they're exercising, then they might not get that dopamine hit. during exercise or after exercising, because they haven't made the connection that they've done something substantial for themselves. Whereas when I exercise, whether it be lifting weights or doing like a HIIT workout or going for a run or whatever it might be, when I exercise, for me, it's being able to step up. It's being consistent, and I, in my mind, link succeeding with exercise to being able to accomplish a whole host of different things in my life, to do with my businesses, to do with my finances, to do with my investments, to do with, you know, my family, my friends, the people with whom I support in many different ways. Like, for me, these things are linked because it requires you to step up. It requires you to calm your ego down and to really become present in what you're doing. So when I have a great workout, I'm in my mind thinking, I'm gonna have a good day. I'm going to smash it with my business. I'm going to step up here. I'm gonna make good decisions. I'm gonna step up and help people. I can tell, I can feel it. So I make those connections in my brain, whereas a lot of people don't associate exercise with anything else that may be important to them. Like when I kill it in the gym, in my mind, I'm gonna think, you know what? I'm going to be even more present with my family. I'm going to be even more positive with my friends. You know, I'm stepping up. I'm doing the things that I know I need to do, and all these sorts of things. So, I mean, that's why I experience dopamine and positive. I release positive chemicals in the brain when I exercise and thereafter. Okay, and the same thing for reading. You know, people think of reading and they think, you're just reading words on a page, you know, that's boring, that makes me tired, I want to go sleep when I read, and all. Fair enough, all these sorts of things are absolutely fine. But reading to me means taking time for myself, and that in itself produces dopamine. Reading to me means I'm making progress. I'm being a little bit better than the way I was before. I'm better today because I read, and I made time. I prioritized my reading. I prioritized myself. I put myself first through reading. And not just that, I'm reading really substantial, powerful things most of the time. And it's things that I share with others in conversation, in my training, in my books, or whatever it might be. I know that by reading, I'm going to be able to give more to others. So, and that's why it releases dopamine for me, because I've got those very positive associations with what I'm doing. So really what I'm saying to you here is I'm happy because I know what makes me happy. Okay? So my question to you guys is, what makes you happy? What do you enjoy doing? Make time for it. What enables you to experience flow? What enables you to feel relaxed, to be positive? It could be going out with your friends. It could be watching a movie. It could be learning something meaningful. You know, it could be anything. It could be learning to play an instrument. It could be going to a concert. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's happy for some people may not make others happy. It's about learning how you operate, learning what makes you happy, and make sure you do it every day. And that's the key here. Making time for yourself. That's what makes me happy. So let's move on to the next question, shall we? Are you always so positive? Not always. Right. I'm only human. Sometimes and even though I'm so consistent as it relates to ensuring that my internal world, my internal state, my thoughts, my emotions, and therefore my behaviors, even though more often than not that overcomes any like external situation where anything that would create tension. Like, so let me give you a couple of analogies. If you're going to take a penalty, if you're playing a soccer or football match and you're about to take a penalty, it's about making sure that your internal state is so positive, so focused, you're in the zone, rather than feeling overwhelmed by the fans, the crowd, the opposition, whatever it is, or the goalie in front of you and all that sort of stuff. That's an example. It's about making sure your internal state is so grateful, so open and spacious. That's the way I like to put it. When you're conscious, when you're awakened, when you're present in the moment, and as opposed to overthinking, being negative, thinking from within the ego. What will happen to me if I miss? These people are relying on me. I'm going to let these people down. These people are going to think I'm a loser, I'm a failure. I'm meant to be an amazing footballer, soccer player. Like, if I miss this, what are people going to think about me now? I might not win that trophy or that award or whatever it is. So for me, it's about making sure your internal world is more potent than your external environment, if you will. So, am I always so powerful? Not always, but I would say certainly most of the time. Because of my perspectives, because of my paradigms, because of the fact that I now teach myself to see the positive things in life. And it reminds me of that. This was in Friends. Who was the guy who was always Fun Bobby? That was him. And but he had an alcohol problem in the show. But was it? No, it wasn't him. Oh gosh, I think I've got Friends confused. But it definitely is a character in Friends, and he was always positive, no matter what happened. I think Phoebe was dating him. Yeah, it wasn't that guy. It wasn't Fun Bobby. But he just saw everything positively. He was like, "Oh, that's amazing! Oh, that's amazing!" And it's a little bit like that, but that is hyperbole for sure. And that's the way I live my life. Because whenever something sad or painful happens, it creates space. World War One, World War Two, some atrocious things, some unforgivable things happened. Millions of people, innocent soldiers. Well, I say innocent soldiers because they're just doing what they think is the right thing to do, and even though in the grand scheme of things, it's always wrong to kill someone, if they're the enemy or not, right? So these wars were absolutely horrendous, disgraceful, inexplicable. But wars create space for something new to come along. And during the process of these wars and thereafter, it created space for the female movement. Because these economies, these countries needed people to step up. Millions of men were dying. Businesses were collapsing, and that we needed women to step out of their traditional roles in the past and to really showcase their skills and show that they can become more helpful and they have more aptitudes than how society perceived them at the time. And that's just another analogy that I'm giving you to show that sometimes when something bad happens, it creates some space for something new, like, and this happens with many people. Sometimes it's incidents and illness or something will happen to someone that creates a chance for them to shift. You're like Dr. Joe Dispenza, an absolute phenomenon, someone who's incredible in the world of neuroscience, changing your habits and these sorts of things. Absolutely fantastic human being, great wealth of knowledge. And for him, he had a really bad car accident, and I believe it almost paralyzed him, and so on and so forth. And it took something like that for him to truly awaken. It took so much suffering, physical suffering, and therefore inducing mental suffering. That affliction enabled him to kind of develop a new level of consciousness, because when you have certain ways of living, you associate yourself for being this and that, or, I'm active, I'm smart, I'm this and that, I'm sociable, I'm da-da-da-da-da. And then something happens in your life that just literally changes the game of life, if you will. Where suddenly your entire lifestyle has to change. Like, you have to sleep more, you have to rest more, you can't move around if you've had those kind of bad experiences. Like, you're left to ponder, you're left to read or learn or these sort of things. I think the same sort of thing happened to like Milton Erickson, for example, the founder of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and he had this disease. And he was constrained to a wheelchair, for instance, and being confined to a wheelchair, and the fact that he wasn't able to do what most people could do in their normal lives, he was left to learn and study and be observant of people and pay attention to people's states and how to influence himself and others to do things. And he became an absolute master in that avenue, and he's been able to help people in that particular area. And I'm not saying something drastic has to happen, but the more egoic people are, the more signs you'll be given in life to help you to change. I believe that greater intelligence, whether it's God, Allah, whatever it is you believe, if you're spiritual, whatever it is you believe, whatever great intelligence you look to, I believe that force will look to give you signs throughout your life, kind of like a nudge or a poke, like, listen, change this. This is where your ego's taking control. You're getting reckless. Like you're buying this really expensive car and you're still going out drinking alcohol when you're driving in that state. You're driving quickly. Like, life will give you, and you have a near car accident, for example, and you were drink driving or whatever it is. Like, that's a sign. If you came close to having an accident, that was a sign. And the problem is, a lot of people don't notice these signs sooner than later, until it's too late, or like the signs you get given by that great intelligence become more and more ruthless, and sometimes something really drastic or even times fatal has to happen for someone to finally develop that shift in their mindset, to finally become conscious, to finally start to see something deeper in life, and rather than their, like, this superfluous kind of pretentious way of living, for instance. So pay attention to any signs that might be coming your way to be happy, and also don't wait for it. Choose to change now. Like, if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, you know what, what I've noticed from this podcast is, maybe I'm a little bit too much within my ego. Maybe I'm not living the healthiest way. Maybe I'm doing these sort of things and I've wanted to change them, but I haven't. I'll change it now. Like, change can happen in an instant, but it needs to come from within you, right? You can't look, and the problem is, a lot of people look for an external event to happen for them to change something. They look to win the lottery, or to win a bet, or they look to meet someone in their life who's going to positively transform their existence. You can't do that, because you attract what you have inside. And if you're someone who's sad or hopeless or angry or whatever it might be, you're going to kind of see and move toward that with which you have within you. Dr. Wayne Dyer, for example, gives an amazing metaphor here. He says, if you squeeze an orange, what will come out? And it's a very obvious answer, I get it. And it's only orange juice. You're not going to get apple juice from squeezing an orange. You're not going to get pineapple juice from squeezing an orange. Every time, whenever you squeeze an orange, you're going to get orange juice. And that's the way we are. Whatever we have inside, however we've conditioned ourselves to live, whatever emotions we've chosen to experience every single day, habitually, we'll begin to see things from that filter, through that lens. And you'll keep attracting the same kind of problems, and you keep seeing things in a certain kind of way, and you're not going to really change your happenstance at all if this is the way in which we live. So, I digress so much, but I hope you find this stuff valuable. So, am I always positive? Most of the time, even when I have a negative or stressful moment, I am very good at changing my state, at becoming more present, at flowing with that negative experience, and it soon passes and is oftentimes replaced with a more enlightened, positive experience. So most of the time I'm positive. It's because of the things that I do. It's because I don't put as much pressure on myself as I used to do things perfectly and all these sorts of things. I'm more focused on being present and helping people in the best way that I can, with however I can. I'm not fake like I used to be in many ways, pretending you're perfect, pretending you can do everything, only partaking in things if you think you're going to do a perfect job at it, and all these sorts of things. Like, it's just about doing things that you enjoy in life, sharing your skills, being your best, only doing what you're best, because that's all you can ever do, right? You can only do what you know. That's just the way it is. So if you want to be better and make better choices in your life, then there's a process you're going to need to follow. You're going to need to learn. You're going to maybe need to get a mentor in that field or avenue. You need to go on retreats or on holidays, or go on courses that's going to develop you in those capacities. But you don't have to be a very well balanced person. Like, you can learn to delegate your skills, whether you have a business or not. You can learn to delegate what might be your supposed weakness, whether it be maybe you're not very good with maths or finances. You can look to delegate that to like your accountant or your financial advisor or a familial member or friend or that matter who has more experience in those areas. Like, get support, help others, develop unconditional love and relationships. That's what makes me happy as well. So I'll go back slightly to that other guy. Right, let's move on. How can you repair a relationship that is falling apart? So, a relationship that's falling apart. Relationships, and this is why there are so many divorces this day and age. It's often because of a few things, right? Mainly a relationship will falter because the people are not giving unconditional love in their relationships. They have an agenda. They're holding on to the pain of their past. Sometimes they're seeing negative things happen in their lives, and they use their spouse as like a blaming mechanism, because they personally might have like a victim mentality, and they point the finger whenever something goes wrong in their lives. The meeting went wrong today because I was thinking about my spouse, because they pissed me off the other day. Da 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 da. And these are some of the ways in which things can go wrong. Sometimes a relationship can go wrong because you're not able to change your state after work, for example. So say if you are someone when you have a difficult job and you have to be a certain way, like a lawyer, for example, or a police officer and something like this, and you're used to being very like authoritative or dominant or in control of situations, or you're used to, finding ways of manipulating others or whatever it might be, right? Or catching people making mistakes and pointing at them and saying, I got ya. Like, if you can't turn that off when you get home to your spouse, you're gonna fall into some bad situations. You're gonna create conflict and tension in your relationships. And whenever someone's stressed, they don't make good decisions. And if you're creating tension, you're reducing the possibility of being honest with each other and being candid and really clear with your communication. You're probably going to talk to your partner less and less because of this growing tension that you're not addressing. And again, what I was telling you guys about signs earlier, spotting things before they escalate and spiral out of control. The same applies to our relationships. Like, if there is something that your partner does that you dislike, you got to mention it, but obviously in the right kind of way, in a way that they're going to understand. And what a lot of people do is they don't express themselves because they're overthinking, they're being their ego, and think they'll let it go or whatever it is. And then it happens on a regular basis, and then you're holding on to the pain of your past. Like, it accumulates, this negative energy field, whatever it be, will accumulate in this relationship. And many people hold on to it until it like bursts out in like a really negative, aggressive, like backlash, if you will. And it just didn't need to get that far. It did not need to get to that position if you were communicating clearly. And you need to be present in your relationship. You need to genuinely become better at listening. Because a lot of people in their relationships, they're so busy focusing on their agenda and what they want to happen in the relationship, that sometimes they're not even listening to their partner. They're not even understanding the issues here. And they're trying to win. They're trying to be right rather than doing the right thing. And that's why a lot of people are struggling in their relationships. Let's shift gears slightly. Maybe a relationship, many relationships go downhill because of finances. And like I'm saying, COVID-19, the furlough scheme ending, companies downsizing, a lot of negativity and depression that build up and that create that negative collective energy field amongst like certain like your local community or society in general, for that matter. And it leads to a lot of tension. It leads to a lot of negativity. And when you're negative, you're more negative with your partner, of course, like, and then you're being egoic because you're acting out of fear with your partner, and that's only going to bring out your partner's ego even more. Now, the challenge is this: the right thing to do to repair your relationship is to practice being more present, listening, making quality time to communicate, being more loving. You know, Tony Robbins says this best. He says, you know, if you treat a relationship, the way you did in the beginning, then there will never be an end, because the beginning of a relationship is oftentimes so exciting. You're infatuated with each other. You want to make each other happy. You're more focused on the other person rather than yourself. And over time, we do change. We do become familiar. The law of familiarity. We take things for granted. That includes our spouse as well, our partner. And the key thing here is to always be grateful and to appreciate your partner for who they are, and to not look to change them. If you're looking to change someone, then the relationship is destined to have a downfall. It's just the way it is. Instead of approaching a relationship like this, you should want to be together because of the fact that you make each other better. You can communicate, you feel connected, you feel more at one, rather than creating more conflict and feeling more separate, or feeling better than your partner, or trying to persuade or manipulate your partner, or trying to get one up on your partner, or whatever it is, or trying to get your way when you're communicating with your partner, where all these kind of like egoic patterns that people live in their relationships. So the first thing I recommend to repair a relationship is to practice being more present, and to practice understanding your partner better, and taking responsibility for where things are going wrong. And I think this is one of the biggest problems people face in their relationships, is that they're too busy pointing the finger. Like, if you have an argument, what you really should be doing is, where did I go wrong in this argument? What did I say that was out of turn? Where could I have changed things? Where could I have spoken about what was really the problem, rather than, focusing on my agenda within the argument? And that's the problem here. People aren't present. People aren't listening. People are too busy in their mind thinking about what they want to say, what they want to get off their chest, rather than actually paying attention to what their partner's saying. And that's why a lot of relationships go down here. It could be financially related. It could be because both people are very egoic, very stubborn, trying to control one another in different forms. And yeah, a lack of presence is the key. Now, what might happen, and this is absolutely fine. Sometimes the right thing to do is to leave the relationship, especially if you think it's a toxic relationship, especially if you think like your partner is making you feel and experience negative things more often than positive ones. That just makes sense, right? Now, this is when you know that you might want to move on in your relationship, to stop the suffering for both ends, right? When you become more positive, when you listen better, when you're more positive, when you do your best to understand your partner more, when you try to do the right thing more often, when you put things into perspective rather than blowing things out of control and making things more egoic and more emotional, more filled with drama, which a lot of people do because they're just programmed in terms of their subconscious programs I'm referring to. They're just programmed to experience negativity, argumentation, and all these sorts of things. So when you become more present, you're going to need one of two things to happen here for this relationship to be able to recover. Your partner's going to need to become more present. Now, hopefully by you diminishing your ego and becoming more conscious and more present in your moments, hopefully that will appease their own ego and calm them down, so they're not as defensive, they're not as aggressive, they're not as controlling, they're not as rude, or whatever it is, right? That's causing the issue. If they cannot be present within the foreseeable future, even though you know that you are becoming more present, you're becoming more fair, you're taking responsibility for the entire situation, you're looking to change things to support them if it's appropriate and if you think it's the right thing to do. If they aren't becoming more present, if they're not making the positive changes, if you are outgrowing them and they're not growing, And there's going to be a barrier. You're going to become more enlightened, more conscious, more peaceful, more present, more joyous. And they're going to be wanting, I want to feel superior. I want to win the battles. I want to get my way. I want, like, it's not going to work. And that's when it's the right time to leave. But unfortunately, a lot of people stay too long in their relationships out of fear because they're scared of the unknown. And you're going to be scared of the unknown in all situations in life. The key thing here is, if you know it's the right thing to do, you have to make the change. So there is a right time and place to leave a partner. It's not always about repairing the relationship for the sake of the kids, or because it makes life easier for you financially speaking, because of where you live or how you support each other in different ways. And it's not about buying love. Real love is about presence. Real love is about communication. Real love is about being there, being thoughtful for your partner. Real love is about showing affection, and showing that you love someone rather than just saying it, and not necessarily meaning it. But anyway, I don't want to get too lovey-dovey. So yeah, those are the main questions that I wanted to address in this podcast. Please send me through even more. Comment below. Let me know what questions you would like me to address in future sessions. But we're not quite finished yet. We're now going to move on to another section. So what have I been up to recently? This is a section I want to share, because this is my chance again to express my learning, what I've been going through. So what have I been up to recently? Exercising quite a lot. I've been doing a lot of training, guys. I've been keeping fit. I've been keeping active, doing my best not to be overtraining, because that increases oxidative stress. That can harm your neurons. That can lead to free radicals being released in your body, which can lead to all kinds of illness and ailments down the line, long term. So what have I been up to recently? Lots of presents. Not presents as in buying people things. Being present. What I've been up to recently. Listen, we're limited in terms of what we can do. This is COVID-19 times, all right? Lots of reading. I've been doing plenty of reading as of late. Really developing my spiritual practices in being more present, being more loving, being more grateful. And the Premier League's back, football's back. So I'm an Arsenal fan, yes, but I'm not attached to Arsenal. Like, it won't make or break my mood, because then I'm giving up my mental emotional state for an external event, which takes away control. And again, when you say, I am an Arsenal fan, but I'm a detached Arsenal fan. Obviously, I pay attention to the positive changes that's happening within Arsenal at the moment. It makes me feel good, but I'm also aware that not to get too overly enthralled and to let the ego come into control. Because whenever you use the words "I am," you are commanding yourself into a destiny, and also you are connecting yourself to something, and that thing is associated with who you are, your identity. So yes, I enjoy watching Arsenal play football. I've been watching for football more and more. Very proud of the start. I think Arsenal's going to finish in the top 3 this season. We shall see. So I've been watching my sport. I've been doing my exercise. What have I been up to recently? I'm enjoying sunshine. The vitamin D, absolutely incredible for you. Helps you sleep better. And that's what I've been working on as well. Just sleeping that little bit more. It's absolutely amazing for your brain cells, to remove plaque from the brain, to increase the amount of natural killer cells that exist in your brain, which helps to clear out any toxic substances that might have generated throughout that day, and so on and so forth. Sleeping well helps you to transfer short-term knowledge into your long-term memory. Sleeping well helps you to become more creative. Sleeping well helps you to increase your growth hormone and to reduce ghrelin, the hunger hormone, so you don't eat too much, eat ravenously, so you don't overly spike insulin levels and become insulin resistant and all these sorts of things. So yeah, I'm eating healthily. I'm training quite well. Lots of running, especially in the sunshine. Love that stuff. And yeah, very very simple at the moment. Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy going on. Um, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying all these very simple things. So that's what I've been up to recently. I'm going to give you the supplement of the episode. Yes. The learning is not over. So I want to tell you about the importance of potassium. Yes, because potassium here, really every single day you want to get up to 4,700 grams of potassium every single day. It helps with your blood pressure. It helps to reduce the risk of things like stroke and so on and so forth. It helps lower fluid retention, water retention as well. It helps to lower insulin levels so that you can burn fat. Yes, so having this or consuming, say, 7 to 10 cups of vegetables, which can give you the equivalent of 4,700 grams, for instance. Or having things like avocados. Bananas are quite high in potassium, but it's also high in sugar and so on and so forth, which spikes insulin. So be careful with fruit. But potassium is great. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. You need it in copious amounts, like I've already shared with you. So you can get it through your nutrition. If you know you're not eating too healthily, then you might want to get in a supplement form as well. It can improve your quality of sleep. It can support your metabolism. It can help to lower cortisol, stress levels, because of what it does to growth hormone and how it supports your bodily functions generally. So yeah, potassium is one of my go-to moves. More for my fat loss endeavors and staying in physical shape and mental shape for that matter. So that's one of the main reasons why I supplement with potassium, and I have so much salad. Go for colorful salads, guys, for the polyphenols, in particular the flavonoids from these colorful vegetables and salads. It keeps you fuller for longer, soluble fiber, so good for you. But anyway, that's the supplement of the episode. Book of the episode, I want to talk to you about, yes, Grant Cardone, business tycoon, the 10x rule. And the reason why I like this book is, yeah, it's very much based on earning 10 times your income. So it does have a monetary financial perspective, but the reason why I appreciate this is because it's very much about your mindset. And I like to take this, and I like seeing commonalities amongst things. So I take this book and I appreciate what it tells me about the finances, but I appreciate what it teaches you about your internal dialogue. Having that growth, open mindset, and how it applies to different areas. So I find it an interesting read. It's easy to read as well. It's enjoyable. It's not overly complicated as well. So if you're thinking of what to read next, if you are interested in finances, if you are interested in changing your mindset, if you are interested in becoming more abundant, then this is a nice book to go with. So yes, that'll be the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Send me your questions through. I will address it in the next couple of podcasts. Have a good day, guys. Stay strong, and I'll see you soon.